Chapter 1. The Proposal. The rain fell in a steady drizzle, soaking the fresh earth as Lena stood motionless beside her husband's grave. The dull thud of dirt hitting the coffin echoed in her ears, each sound dragging her deeper into the grim reality. Mark was gone. She felt numb, her black dress clinging to her in the damp air. People murmured their condolences, touching her shoulder, offering their pity. She barely registered their faces. And then Daniel, Mark's brother. His presence was warm beside her, yet his touch on her arm made her flinch. She turned, expecting another empty consolation. Instead, his eyes, intense, pleading, held something deeper, something unsettling. "Lena," Daniel whispered, "I need to talk to you. Alone." She frowned, glancing at the sea of mourners. "Now?" "Yes, now." She let him pull her away, too exhausted to protest. They stopped beneath the sprawling oak at the edge of the cemetery, where the wet leaves trembled in the breeze. Daniel hesitated, inhaling sharply. Then the words tumbled out, words so absurd, so vile, that they sent a chill through her bones. "Marry me, Lena." Lena felt the breath leave her lungs. "What? I love you," he said, his voice raw. "I've always loved you." A surge of white-hot fury overtook her grief. She yanked her arm away, staring at him like he was insane. "You're proposing to me?" she hissed. At Mark's funeral, Daniel stepped closer. "You don't understand. There's something I need to tell you about Mark. Something you don't know." Lena shook her head, backing away. "I don't want to hear it." But Daniel caught her wrist, his grip urgent. His voice was barely above a whisper when he said, "Mark was not the man you thought he was." Chapter 2, The Secret Account. Lena slammed the door behind her, locking it as if that could keep the madness outside. Daniel's words still echoed in her head. Mark was not the man you thought he was. She didn't want to believe him. Mark was her husband, her love, the man who brought her coffee in bed, who rubbed her feet after long days. But grief had a strange way of twisting reality, making everything feel unfamiliar. She peeled off her rain-soaked dress, tossing it aside. As she did, her gaze landed on the dresser, the one Mark always kept locked. A whisper of doubt stirred inside her. Mark wasn't a secretive man. At least, she thought he wasn't. Before she could second-guess herself, Lena pulled open the top drawer and rummaged through his things. Ties, receipts, loose change, nothing unusual. But then her fingers brushed against something stiff and smooth. An envelope. Her heart pounded as she tore it open. Inside was a bank statement. Her eyes skimmed over the details, her breath catching in her throat. The account balance was over $5 million. That was impossible. Mark didn't have that kind of money. Or at least, he shouldn't have. Lena sank onto the bed, scanning the transactions. One stood out, a wire transfer made just one day before his death. It was a large sum, sent to a woman named Rachel Carter. Lena's pulse raced. Who the hell was Rachel Carter? Her fingers tightened around the paper. There was only one way to find out. Chapter 3, The Other Woman. Lena sat in her car, gripping the steering wheel so hard her knuckles turned white. The address she'd found for Rachel Carter was a rundown apartment complex on the city's outskirts. Mark's money had gone here? To this place? The air inside the car felt suffocating, thick with unanswered questions. She had imagined this moment in a dozen different ways. Maybe Rachel was his mistress. Maybe she was a blackmailer. Maybe Mark had a whole other family. Whatever the truth was, she had to know. Lena climbed out of the car, her heels clicking against the cracked pavement. The building smelled of damp wood and cigarette smoke. Apartment 3B. She took a deep breath and knocked. At first, nothing. Then, a scuffle from inside. The door creaked open just an inch, held by a rusted chain lock. A pair of wide, fearful eyes stared back at her. Rachel Carter was young, maybe mid-20s, with dark circles under her eyes and a nervous tremor in her voice. I don't know you," Rachel said, gripping the doorframe like she might collapse. Lena held up the bank statement. "My husband wired you a lot of money before he died. Mark Carter." Rachel's entire body tensed. "Go away." Lena shoved her foot in the door before it could slam shut. "Who are you?" she demanded. "Who was Mark to you?" Rachel's breathing quickened. "You don't understand. If they find out I talked to you." "Who?" Rachel's lips parted like she was about to say something, but then her eyes darted past Lena, down the dimly lit hallway. Her face turned pale. "Shit," she whispered. Lena turned, but the hall was empty. When she looked back, Rachel had yanked off the chain lock and was shoving something into Lena's hands, a small black flash drive. Her voice was barely a whisper. "This will change everything, but you need to be careful." Then, before Lena could react, Rachel slammed the door shut and locked it. Lena stood frozen, the cold weight of the flash drive in her palm. Lena sat at her kitchen table, staring at the small black flash drive Rachel had given her. It felt heavy, though it couldn't have weighed more than a few ounces. Heavy with answers, heavy with secrets. She had barely slept since leaving Rachel's apartment. The look of pure terror in that woman's eyes haunted her. Lena exhaled sharply, inserted the flash drive into her laptop, and clicked the only file on it, a video. The screen flickered to life. At first, just static, then a dimly lit hotel room. And then she saw Mark. Lena's breath caught in her throat. Her husband. He sat on the edge of a bed, gripping his hands together, his face pale and eyes darting toward the door like he expected someone to burst in. And then he spoke. "Lena, if you're watching this, I'm probably dead." A chill ran down her spine. Mark swallowed hard, his voice unsteady. "There are things I never told you, things I wanted to, but I was afraid. And if I'm gone now, it's because I ran out of time." Lena felt her hands shake as she clutched the laptop. "What I did, the money, I didn't have a choice," Mark continued. He exhaled shakily, rubbing his temples. "But this isn't just about me. It's about Daniel." Lena's body went rigid. "Daniel." Mark leaned in closer to the camera, his eyes burning with urgency. "Lena, if Daniel is near you, don't trust him." Lena's pulse roared in her ears. "No, no." Daniel had proposed to her at Mark's funeral, had whispered about Mark's secrets, had acted like he cared, but Mark had warned her against him. She didn't realize she was shaking until the laptop nearly slipped from her grip. The screen flickered again. A shadow moved behind Mark. Someone was in the room. Mark's head jerked up, his face twisted in panic. "I have to go." The video cut to black. Lena sat frozen, her heart pounding. And then she replayed the last few seconds, the moment before the video ended, the shadowy figure, the shape of a man, something about his stance, his silhouette. And then it hit her like a freight train. She recognized him.